You sitting here are the heart of that program, and we wanted to get started on the right foot. So what I'm going to do is just describe what our program looks like and what our process is, and then we'll go through it. First of all, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to come out tonight. A lot of work has gone into this event. My good friend Suzanne Barclay, who's heading towards the door over there, really put it together. We have panelists who you will be introduced to shortly. David Chilson, you can't see because he's manning the TV cameras with his son Daniel right now. We are on TV. And our town staff who set up the room. So a lot of things come together to have a meeting like this with such a great turnout. Last year, I sponsored a successful town board resolution opposing the desal plant and the associated costs. And it was approved by the majority of the board. I've spoken out at PSC hearings, just like many of the people in this room have done. And I was sorry to see that the PSC was not planning to hold hearings on the surcharge case locally. So we decided to do one ourselves. And that's what brought us out tonight. All the comments tonight will be submitted as part of the official record. Kathy here is a court stenographer, and she'll be taking down the comments for submission in the official manner that's required. And I just want to remind you that I've always been impressed by the passion and the intelligence and the eloquence of people like yourselves coming out to speak on an issue that really does impact you, and I'm sure other people waiting to speak will appreciate it very much. When we're finished with the sign-in sheet, of course, we'll go to show of hands. Anybody who sat down thinking maybe they didn't have anything to say or just wanted to listen, but as you get into it, you have something you want to say, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll take speakers once we finish with the sign-in sheet. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to say a word or two in addition, just why I oppose the surcharge. For several reasons, and I'll just say briefly, mainly because the purpose is to recoup expenses that are already incurred for the proposed desal plant, a plant that we're finding as time goes by, and we'll hear more about this tonight, is less and less needed and is not environmentally responsible. Despite years of public opposition, questions raised about water management, questions raised about financial management by United Water, and a whole lot of money getting spent on a plant prospectively, you know, the company continued to push forward and spend millions of dollars a year, and now is asking ratepayers to pay for that. At the same time, doing quite well and providing dividends to shareholders and so on that do not indicate that it's a poverty-stricken company in need of rate hikes. I think that's the basic framing of it. That I believe to be true. We've been opposing this for a long time, and this hearing is to hear other people's perspective on that and to present that information to the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission being the agency that has the authority to set the rates for United Water. And we're going to hear a little bit more technically about what that means and how this fight is going. So I want to introduce you to a few people here whose expertise is really deep and comprehensive, and I think it's important for you to hear from. I'll just list who they are, and then they will get up and present their information. I've got Alden Wolf here from the Rockland County Legislature. He's the chair of the legislature. Give him a hand. I've got Daniel Duthie here, who's been hired by the towns to work on the negotiation from the perspective of ratepayers, and he's just done a great job with that. Suzanne Barclay is a planner who can dissect this surcharge and what this money is being used for like nobody else. And Haley Carlock is from Environmental Advocates and Scenic Hudson, and she's got perspective on what the alternatives to the desal plant will be. So without further ado, as they say, I'd like to invite Alden Wolf up and just say a word or two about your breaking news and give us a start on this session. Again, we're going to keep these informational briefings relatively short, have one or two questions, and then we'll start taking public comment. All right? Thanks, Alden.
Thank you very much for having me. Apologize, I have allergy season here and voice is a little rough, but I wanted to make sure that everyone in this room really are among some of the first people to hear some breaking news. And that is that, as you know, there is a case that was initiated before the PSC last year to re-examine the need for water, for long-term water supply in Rockland County. And that's one of the three cases we're here tonight to talk about, the surcharge case. But there were public hearings back some time ago which were just unbelievably attended, and I'm sure many of you were there as well, to talk about our feelings about the need for a new water supply in Rockland County. Well, just late this afternoon, we received word that the staff at the Public Service Commission, that's the Department of Public Service staff, issued a report and recommendation to the PSC, which says that they agree basically with our data and not United Waters, and they have made a recommendation that the PSC find that the water needs in Rockland County are not as dire as they were previously estimated, and that instead of 2015 being that magic target date for development of a new supply, it's now 2020. And I think that's a fantastic thing for a number of reasons. First of all, what it shows is the value in citizen grassroots ground level advocacy. So I think you all deserve a round of applause for everything that you're doing. Now, this isn't all hearts and rainbows and flowers. What it means is that it's merely a recommendation to the PSC, but it's a validation of what many of us have been saying. The PSC can still make its own determination, and even if it adopts the report, it still means that the process may continue for this desal plan. And that's fine, because what it does is it gives us some breathing room. It gives us an opportunity to continue to do what we're doing, maybe make it less economically palatable for United Water to continue to push this. So again, it's a breaking development. It doesn't mean that everything is solved, but it's certainly better than the alternative. So thank you.
I just wanted to note, because you should know what elected officials are in the room, if you could just stand up and be recognized. Nancy Lowe Hogan from the county legislature, Aaron Weeder from the county legislature, Ellen Jaffe from our state assembly, and Connie Coker, who was a county legislator and continues to work hard for the community. And I'd like to introduce, who are we going to have going next, actually? It was Daniel Duthie, taking us through the legal elements first, so we know exactly why we're here and what rate case we're actually talking about, because there's more than one.
Thank you, Supervisor Stewart. It's an honor to be here. And I want to just echo, having been in many, many public forums over the years, this is truly one of the most active, well-educated, and well-spoken communities I have ever had the privilege of working with. So you should really, really be totally, totally proud. You have turned around an event that was a done deal, and you did it. Nobody else did it. It was your voices that eventually broke down the barrier, because United Water had the fix, was in for their desal plant. And we now have turned it around, and as Alden just indicated, the brakes have been put on, and we still have a lot more work to do, so we can't get smug about it. But so let me just segue into where we are in the surcharge case. The surcharge case was filed actually before the rate case in June of 2013. And the company, in a, quote, verified petition, sought to recover $56.8 million that they had accumulated as a result of pursuing this project, basically since 2007. During the course of the case, they eventually updated that, so they're now looking to recover over $60 million. And the $60 million comes from $39 million of vendor direct charges. Now, these vendors, 5 of them, 5 vendors alone, spent 75% of the $35 million. During the hearings that just ended this past Monday, we had 5 days of evidentiary hearings. They were all long days. One in particular went to 6:45, not as long as the October 1st hearings, if anybody remembers. But the evidentiary hearings, we discovered that the expenditures from the top 5, and I'm going to put the law firm aside, of the top 5 was legal expenditures. The top 5, CDM, spent $15 million. And I'm going to pass around an invoice. Maybe somebody could just come up and help. I didn't bring enough, so just if people just pass it around. It's pretty short. No, that's fine. It's pretty short, but the invoice says to United Water from the vendor, and it shows people who have obvious expertise, they have high hourly rates, and they have the number of hours that they spent in a given month. Guess what's not on the vendor, on the invoice? No explanation of the services they provided. No description of the work that they did. So it is just an invoice that says, pay me, and a sum of money. I do not know how anyone, if your plumber came to you and said, here's the invoice, pay me $500, and there was no explanation, I don't think you'd pay it. And I don't know how United Water paid all of this money without having any explanation. And this went on now for 7 years. And the 75% that I'm talking about, $29 million of the $39 million. And I don't need to get into the other details. Some of these other invoices were smaller. But the lion's share of the money that they're seeking to recover from you have absolutely no explanation, no description of the services. Zero, nada, as they say. And I don't know how the Public Service Commission can authorize a surcharge based upon, oh, I forgot to tell you. It's all under a confidential record. Every single invoice that I've just described, and that's why I had to make up that hypothetical that's circulating around, I was not allowed to tell the public about that because I had been part of the protective order, and therefore I could not reveal this confidential information. So I decided to do a surrogate for the confidential information. And the staff panel who was testifying agreed that that piece of paper that you are looking at was in format representative of the $29 million that was out there that comprised 75%. Now, there are other issues that there were lobbying expenses and some outreach and education, which the staff at least took out of the case. The other issue that is very, very important is the AFUDC calculation. Now, AFUDC is allowance for funds used during construction, and typically a utility is allowed on a long-term project to accumulate, for accounting purposes, interest, and then when it gets transferred into service, the entire amount goes into rate base, and you pay them back for the AFUDC as well as the original costs. So what we have here is a situation where a vendor is out, away from his home office, and he goes out and he pays for dinner, and it's a $50 bill. And we don't know whether there's wine in the $50 bill or not, but let's assume there isn't. $50 bill, by the time you finish paying for that $50 dinner, it's going to cost you $102.50 because it gets part of the cost in the rate base, which gets recovered over a 20-year period with a return on it. So the $50 dinner is $102.50. That is totally outrageous. And again, there's no justification for it because many of these invoices, and I'll have to mention there were several, many from a very well-known, and I can't say the name because it would be violating the confidential documents, but it's a very well-known coffee house. And so the latte, is also going to, if it costs $5, is now going to cost the ratepayers over $10. And that's totally inappropriate. So that's where we are. The good news, I haven't even caught up to that yet. Haven't read the recommended decision from the staff to the commission, but that's the good news. And so that's where we are right now with the surcharge case. Briefs are due on June 3rd, and we will be briefing the heck out of this, particularly the subject that I just discussed with you. And reply briefs are due June 10th. What happens after that, we're not sure. There may be a recommended decision, as there were in the rate case. There may not. The company at this point said they want to have a recommended decision because they want to have, and I can't even say this, they want to have transparency in the process. So we'll see. To get the recommended decision, they may have to agree to an extension of the suspension period, which right now is scheduled to expire on July 28th. And that would mean it would go into August before any surcharge would go into effect. And we'd have to see now what the effect of the staff report is going to be on this entire process. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Daniel. And here is Suzanne Barclay.
Thank you, Andy. I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about the actual numbers of the 60 million surcharge. So, in 2010, the Public Service Commission allowed United Water, in their order, to recover costs related to the desal. So what they said was, once United Water had started construction, site preparation would be sufficient. They could then begin to recoup some of the expenses that they had already incurred on the desal. But what they said was, once construction had begun, we all know construction has not yet begun, so how did they get to do this? Well, they went back, as Dan mentioned, last June and filed a surcharge application for $56.8 million to recover costs related to the desal. They argue that in doing so, it will save ratepayers about $23 million in interest costs, because they will save that money for interest that is not incurred. So that's the argument. So what is this $56.8 million? Well, it's actually $60.3 million, because, as Dan said, they updated their numbers. So $39 million of it is for these consultants or vendors. That's for both the pilot project and the proposed desal. There's about $3.25 million for payroll and fringe. There's overhead of $5,262,000. And there's this AFUDC, this is the interest on money used during construction, that is $12.7 million worth. When you add that up, it's about $60 million. About a third of that is for costs incurred on the pilot project, which you know was destroyed in Hurricane Sandy, and 2/3 are related to the cost of the proposed desal. These costs were incurred from August 2009 through March 2013. So let's look at the $39 million, because that's what most people are familiar with. These are the costs for the vendors, the consultants that did all the design work and the planning studies for the pilot project and the desal. So for the DEIS, that's the draft environmental impact statement, and all the follow-up, it cost $5.3 million for that document. For the engineering design, for the testing, for the design of the special equipment for the desal, especially these filters, that amounts to about $24 million. For marketing and PR, including spots on the radio, commercials on Cablevision, ads in the newspapers, that's another $2.1 million. My records show that they spent $167,000 on lobbyists. I don't know if that's low, Dan, but that's what they show. Legal fees amount to $5.48 million. Real estate, they spent about $850,000, and then there's another $370,000 in miscellaneous expenses, government fees, and general business costs. So that gets you to the $39 million. Part of the problem is we've never seen a real budget for the desal project. If you recall, in the EIS, they had a range. They said that the cost of the desal project would be from $140 to $190 million. That's a pretty big range. They've since indicated that the cost of the project is now $153 million. So they have narrowed that down. That 153 does include the 60 million surcharge. But the fact is, we still haven't seen a real budget. We've seen a list of expenses for the desal project that has been submitted to the PSC. There's 8 items. I won't go into them now. They're very general categories, but they don't break out, for example, construction costs, overhead and profit. So it's a very general list of costs. So the question is, if you haven't seen a budget, how in the world do you know whether the $60 million surcharge is reasonable? What are you comparing it to? And that's, to me, the problem. We don't know if they're using general accounting principles or how they're analyzing these numbers. We also don't know if United Water is actually managing the cost for this project. And because of those questions, I recommend that the surcharge not be approved. And now
I'm going to quickly speak to the need or lack thereof for the desalination plant and alternatives to it that could provide additional water supply to Rockland County. While that is not directly the subject of the surcharge case, they're obviously closely related, and it kind of points to the absurdity of a situation where Rockland ratepayers are facing the prospect of paying at least $56.8 million and possibly over $100 million more than that for a plant that is unnecessary, and when cheaper and more sustainable alternatives were available. United Water chose to myopically push ahead with its plans for the desalination plant in the face of accumulating evidence over the past several years that there is no need for the plant and that the projections that they used back in 2006 were incorrect. And this fact has basically been affirmed by the Department of Public Service staff report that was released today. United Water's own report that it released last year cites a 5 million gallon per day difference between what they had projected average day demand would be in 2012 and what the actual observed water demand was in 2012. And then for peak day demand, there was an over 10 million gallon per day difference between what was projected in 2006, and that was the basis for the finding of need for a long-term water supply project, and what was actually recorded in 2012. And this is what the Department of Public Service staff found when they looked as well. And contrary to being some anomaly of the recession that's going to bounce back quickly, this is a nationwide trend. Water demand in the United States actually peaked in 1980, and there's been a pervasive decline in household consumption in the United States. In fact, the American Water Works Association wrote in 2012 that, quote, reductions in indoor water use are significant and need to be taken into account by water planners to avoid costly and avoidable overbuilding of water resources and infrastructure. Now, United Water and the Public Service Commission should carefully consider that advice, and it seems like the Department of Public Service staff, at least, is taking some heed to that. And further, the dramatic increase in water rates that will result if United Water is permitted to receive this surcharge and then permitted to move forward to build the plant are going to lead to a further decrease in demand. It's a well-known fact that as rates go up, demand will go down, and this is another fact that is cited by the Department of Public Service staff in their report. And as you all know, United Water is also seeking a separate rate increase, and all of these things on top of each other could result in a doubling of rates for Rockland County, which would surely drive people to naturally use less water. And further, there are a number of alternatives to desalination that are faster, that are cheaper, that are more sustainable, and that would increase water availability in Rockland County over the next several years without having to resort to a capital-intensive water infrastructure project. And Department of Public Service staff actually pointed specifically to the ability of Rockland County to implement some of these measures I'm going to run through really quickly as a potential action that could further delay or even obviate completely the need for any long-term water supply project. One of those is conservation. You know, much of the concern about Rockland County's water supply in the earlier 2000s was driven by summer peak demand, which is generally 25% greater than the rest of the year, and much of that is due to lawn irrigation. And there's a lot of experience in this country with measures that can significantly reduce that additional use by just limiting it by an odd and even day system, restricting the hours when lawns can be irrigated, and during certain situations such as droughts, even banning lawn watering. And in 2012, Rockland County worked with the Columbia University Sustainable Development Workshop, which concluded that lawn irrigation measures, in addition to high-efficiency rebate programs for toilets and washers and spray nozzles, could easily save over 3 million gallons per day in water, which is nearly half the amount that the entire desal plant for at least $150 million would provide, and clearly would be much less expensive. Another thing that United Water could do would be to accelerate its leak detection and repair plans. United Water estimates has 17% of water lost through leaky pipes, and it intends to try to reduce that to 13% by 2035. If they tried to do a slightly more ambitious target of reducing the water leakage to 10% and they accelerated it, you'd get another couple of million gallons per day of water. And Finally, we have the management of Lake DeForest. If there were a more equitable allocation of water from Lake DeForest between Rockland County and New Jersey, which is probably something that would take a little bit more time, that would significantly increase the available water to Rockland County. For over 10 years, the county has been petitioning the DEC to reopen that permit to make more water available for Rockland County. The proposed desal plant, if constructed, would effectively force Rockland to pay a premium to drink desalinated water of questionable quality while sending more Lake DeForest water to New Jersey free of charge. For all of these reasons, it's abundantly clear that United Water cannot permit cannot permit United Water to recover this surcharge for a plant that it has known for years was not needed, and it continued to pursue in the face of information that made clear that there were less expensive alternatives that could increase supply. Thanks.
Really well done. Alden? So you're really kicking off our public comments now.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Dan, Suzanne, Haley, and especially Supervisor Stewart for their hard work on this issue, for hosting this meeting, because it's really an opportunity to shine light on what's really happening in the surcharge case. Rockland ratepayers deserve an impartial look at the finances which are driving United Water's request for a surcharge. And unfortunately, we've had a problem with hidden facts and lack of transparency from the very beginning of this process, and that goes all the way back to the draft environmental impact statement. In fact, United Water has actually taken the position that public opposition and lack of support from elected officials has slowed this process down, thus making it more expensive for them, and by extension, more expensive for the ratepayers. And of course, I find that to be more than just a little bit crazy, and it shows, though, that United Water seems to be making terrible business decisions. To proceed with a project such as this when the vast majority of the public and elected officials oppose it makes absolutely no sense. I also find it to be insulting that United Water feels entitled to be protected from public opposition. In fact, if they were an electrical utility, they would be required under state law to actually fund the outreach of stakeholder groups. Of course, the law should but doesn't include water companies, but more importantly, the public has the absolute right to oppose a project. The right to speak against a matter lies at the very heart of our democracy and our Constitution. It's precisely what makes us free people. Our free speech should never, ever come with a price tag. Even more insulting, it was United Water themselves who delayed the process from the beginning with the submission of an inadequate draft environmental impact statement. And then they took more time to submit the second version. There was widespread agreement that the second submission was equally inadequate. It lacked both transparency and justification for the project, as was found in the often cited excellent study by Eco Northwest. This unfortunately has become a theme which reemerges in this surcharge case. It runs through the rate case, and it even runs in the need case, whereas we've learned today, of course, that with the staff's recommendation that the PSC push back the date from 2015 to 2020, that's not based on United Water's data. That's based on our data. The Public Service Commission might separate all of these cases, but they don't exist in a vacuum. When considered as a whole, United Water appears to be consistently hiding or covering information. Dan spoke a little bit about the nature of the confidential information in the case itself and in the hearings. And of course, we really should be able to rely on our state agencies to provide an impartial accounting. Why can't we get an audit? Why can't we get a prudence hearing from the PSC? Why couldn't we get an issues conference from the DEC? Maybe it's because that the lobbyists that United Water audaciously asks us to pay for, they're getting their job done well. And I think we all should demand that our state oversight agencies do a better job of protecting us. But I humbly invite United Water to join with us to arrive at a comprehensive water plan that the public will accept. Now, believe me, United Water will get more holiday cards if they're working for the good of the ratepayers than if they're not. And this collaborative approach will be possible with the upcoming formation of the Rockland County Joint Task Force on Water Resources Management, which I tell you tonight will soon be in place. Now, I've been told that United Water wants to participate, and I want them to know that we not only welcome them, but we need them. Harry Cornell and I have prepared a draft resolution addressing the establishment, mission, and structure of the task force. We're working closely with our county executive, who's been a willing partner in the preliminary talks. And this will be a collaboration of both the legislative and the executive branches of county government. We will release all the information as soon as it's jointly approved. But it turns out that in 1999, the legislature established what was then known as the Rockland County Water Board. Now, of course, we're changing the name for obvious reasons. But I want to read an excerpt from the legislative intent, which shows how little has changed in 15 years. A little history lesson. The imminent takeover of United Water by the foreign conglomerate Suez Lyonnaise de U, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, I took Spanish in high school, makes it essential that Rockland County take charge of its own destiny with regard to the protection of its watershed and supply of pure water to its residents. It is the desire of the Rockland County Legislature to investigate and assemble relevant data relating to the water resources available to the County of Rockland, both from within and without, and to evaluate the existing facilities. And that language is 15 years old. But the new legislation will do just that. It will rescind the 1999 legislation and create in its place a joint task force with a targeted mission to develop a long-term county water plan that ensures safe, long-term water supply for Rockland County, to investigate, assemble, and examine relevant data relating to both existing and proposed water resources available to Rockland County, and to report its findings, conclusions, and recommendations to the legislative and executive branches of county government. Now, I'm also in the process of enacting simple, common-sense water conservation measures that will ensure a safer water supply, especially during the dry periods of the summer. Now, as Haley just explained, these measures, such as alternate day lawn watering, things like that have proven highly successful in communities around the country, particularly those that face challenges that make Rockland seem almost inconsequential. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that Rockland has ample rainfall. We're not a water-deprived area, and we mustn't allow anyone to perpetuate that myth. I mean, we're not in crisis. We do, like many other places, face occasional seasonal stresses, as noted in the often quoted report, and obviously the report that's been listened to up in Albany, by Paul Heisig, writing for the United States Geological Survey. And these measures will get us through these periods. And as the Water Resource Task Force becomes established, we will benefit from more permanent solutions. Now, let me repeat, we welcome United Water as partners in this effort to use transparent, scientifically viable data to provide Rockland with the highest quality, most affordable water supply. And I make this promise to United Water. You will make a profit. New York's regulatory system practically guarantees that. But you have to work with us to put an end to the escalating costs that the surcharge case so painfully brings home. Rockland can't afford to have its water rates double, or triple, or quadruple. This would be an absolute financial disaster for our residents and for our businesses, and would cut the legs right out of our economic development efforts. The plan that United Water proposes lopsidedly enriches the shareholders of Suez while stressing our community. We must balance this equation in favor of our ratepayers and businesses. The task force will be taking a holistic view of our water supply so that we can address flooding, drainage, disposal, and more. Because as we know, water can't be compartmentalized. As it seeks its own level, Rockland will gain high-quality water at sensible rates, healthy businesses, and a water system that will be the envy of our region. Thank you very much.
Well said, Alden Wolf. Now we're going to cut over, having been kicked off, I think, in great form with a lot of useful information, to our sign-in sheet for more public comment. The first person who signed up, getting through the door long before it was even opened, did a great job, is Ellen Jaffe. So if you could come up. She knows that there's going to be a long list. Ellen, actually, you can use this microphone if you want, but since you're already here. But I'm going to direct the rest of the comments to use that one because it's a little closer. But whatever you prefer is good. Yeah, and just to repeat, as Suzanne reminds me, we do have a court reporter here. Kathy's doing a great job. All of the comments are transcribed and submitted to the Public Service Commission. And again, we're going to stick to the 5-minute limit. And I have the clock, and I have a little blue folder here. I'm going to start waving when it gets close. All right? Go for it, Ellen.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. It's important that your voices are heard and your presence is noted, and I appreciate that. First of all, I want to thank the Water Coalition, so many advocates in our community for their advocacy, that really made a difference, and Al Appleton also, who was very, very helpful, and Sina Cutson, Haley Carluck, Dan Duthie, the supervisor, thank you for holding this hearing. So many voices came together to stand together and respond to this very real concern. Holding this public hearing right now is essential, given that there was, no sense of the Public Service Commission of putting together hearings. So I want to thank you for that. And of course, the good news that we've heard today, and I reviewed that document, and it's quite interesting in terms of holding it off till 2020. But there are many other pieces to that document that I think will be very, very helpful. And I really want to thank the opportunity to speak on behalf of the community I represent today. Many of us here have spoken in previous public service hearings regarding the desalination proposal by United Water. There was one about the need, and more recently about the rate increase, and tonight we'll give testimony on the surcharge and the wider issue of desalination, certainly. And apparently there will be another hearing on the desalination plant. Two of the hearings that we had previously really evolved from a meeting that I set up in Albany with Secretary to the Governor with so many of the advocates saying that we wanted an issues conference. And and that was a very important piece. And what we were able to get were those two major Public Service Commission hearings that indicated that there was a wide range of support in this community for the concern in this community regarding the desalination plant. And I think that sent a very clear message. When I first went to the New York State Assembly from the legislature, and I was on the Environmental Committee, I brought the Environmental Committee here to Rockland County to discuss the issues regarding the desalination plant and the concerns that we already had at that point in 2008. In addition, after the United Water then raised the issue of desalination way back in 2005 or 6, I actually, as a legislator, got the USGS to come to Rockland County and do a study which clearly indicated that the situation was not quite as United Water was suggesting. So, there will be more hearings and there will be more discussions, but this is very, very important that we really raise the bar in terms of what needs to be done. My statement tonight will focus on the scope of this case regarding whether United Water appropriately incurred expenses, whether the accounting method which was used aligns with the standard utility practice, and if the petition to recoup expenses spent is premature at this point, considering that a need for this type of water shortage plan may not be necessary, as we have all indicated, given the current data and the current information that's even noted within the context of that document today. In 1979, a Consolidated Edison company stated it would be neither just nor reasonable for a utilities customer to bear the cost of the inefficient management or poor planning. In 2006, the order and joint proposal by the Public Service Commission mandated United Water to examine long-term water supply options and proceed with implementation. And this was supported by many other agencies, including Rockland County, based on the available data at that time. However, in 2010, with new and more recent information available, a new order and joint proposal stated the company could file for collection of the costs through a separate surcharge. And I quote, "Only if significant construction of the facility begins, which can only incur after United Water receives all the permits and approvals it requires. As no permits or approvals or construction has begun on the desalination plant, or any plant for that matter, it seems rather obvious that United Water is not entitled to a long-term water supply surcharge." Absolutely not required. My testimony in the last hearing case points to many instances of mismanagement with regard to the simple rate increase. For example, United Water never filed for economic obsolescence adjustment to lower taxes. They had no explanation as to why charges have gone up 13 to 15% over the last 2 years. And even though regulations require a water utility to report when unaccounted for water exceeds 18%, United Water never made a filing despite the fact that unaccounted water had been over that threshold for the last 5 years. Now United Water is asking to be reimbursed at the $56.8 million surcharge, planning costs for the desalination project, for engineers, architects, and operation of pilot plant. If the company cannot follow simple water supply regulations and instructions, how can we believe their accounting methods are up to industry standard? And certainly, if you have invoices without explanation, how can you possibly trust that company in what their request is? United Water argues that the ratepayer is better off paying this increase now because they'll pay more in the years to come for the same costs. Right. Yeah, we believe that. Due to financing costs, they're suggesting, and that was noted just before. Rockland County completed its comprehensive plan in 2011, which clearly demonstrated Rockland's water supply was much more optimistic than previously thought. And although United Water certainly had this information, they continued to stick their heads in the sand and spend during the recession. When other companies were acting prudently, United Water's mismanagement was in full operation. United Water has received more than 72% increase in revenues over the last 6 years. While they were making profits, the residents of Rockland County were bearing the costs of their poor business practices. Unfortunately, there is no investment in infrastructure or repairs. But there were expenditures in United Water's one-sided $1 million advertising campaign with misleading statements, and United Water is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on lobbyists. And you've heard some of that background as well. As I have said before, much needs needs repeating. It is only proper that the question of supply is revisited before moving forward ahead with any surcharges or any new plant, desalination or other. In order to get an accurate assessment of Rockland's water resources, it is critical to work from sustainable models, especially in determining future water needs. And now maybe this document will provide somewhat of that opportunity. And according to Dr. Daniel Miller, the Water Supply Program Manager of Rockland County Department of Health, revised annual average projection figures using data through 2013 show substantially lower demand than the last 4 years than they had been projected. With an effective additional water conservation initiative, it could further delay the need of a major long-term water supply project, would raise the costs in Rockland County so significantly. It is long overdue for the Public Service Commission to examine the total cost of this project from first stage to third stage in 2030, and I would push it up there. The currently projected budget is $153 million and a little more than that for stage 1, more than double United Water's first estimates of this project. United Water keeps clinging to the data and information from 2006. United Water continues to ignore the newest data on conservation and usage, along with more affordable long-term water options. They have chosen the project that will be best for corporate profits, not for Rockland residents and businesses. Thank you.
I've got Audrey Fredericton. Welcome. And I'm going to do a better job of signing. This is the timer, and when you hear it ring, time's up.
I will set my own, Mr. Supervisor. My name is Audrey Friedrichsen. I am an attorney with Scenic Hudson. I'm lucky enough to work with Haley Carlock, who you heard from already this evening. My official, is it not on? Does it need to be closer to me? Pick it up. I feel like American Idol. Okay. My official title is the Land Use and Environmental Advocate. So like I said, I'm a lawyer. I like to talk, but I'll do my best to keep it to 5 minutes. Scenic Hudson is a party to this surcharge proceeding, as well as the related case commenced by the Public Service Commission, or the PSC, to examine the continuing need for United Water to develop its long-term water supply in Rockland County. We've also participated before the New York State DEC in its review of the proposal under SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Since our involvement, which began in 2008, it has become clear that there is no need for a new, expensive, energy-intensive water supply infrastructure project like the proposed desalination plant. The construction and operation of a plant is completely unprecedented in this region, which experiences abundant rainfall, as we know today. The numerous adverse environmental impacts of the proposed desalination plant, which will undoubtedly occur if it is built on the sensitive environment of the Haverstraw Bay, are unacceptable. The impacts of Hurricane Sandy's storm surges on the pilot plant also demonstrate the infeasibility of such a facility in the face of escalating climate change impacts, including sea level rise and more frequent and intense storms. Moreover, there will be a huge and overly burdensome economic impact from the project on United Water customers, which is growing by the minute. The numerous adverse human health, environmental, and economic impacts stemming from the proposed plant all lead to the conclusion that it is not the best alternative. There are more sustainable, safer, and less expensive options available, the most obvious of which is water management and conservation, requiring no new facility at all. Very quickly, just to remind the PSC, since that's who we're sending these comments to, there are a few standards applicable here. First and foremost, the primary legal obligation in considering whether to impose a rate change is to protect the utilities ratepayers. Second, as you've already heard, according to law and PSC policy, only just, reasonable, and prudently incurred costs may be recouped. Finally, a water utility bears the burden of proving itself that a proposed rate is just and reasonable. The company utterly fails to meet this burden here. In fact, it is barred from seeking a surcharge at all. The 2010 order specifically prohibits the petition, which says that it can only recover costs for the desalination plant and a surcharge at the time significant construction begins, which means not until physical activity to prepare the site has begun. In ignoring the PSC's order, United Water now prematurely seeks to impose a surcharge on ratepayers to indemnify it from the risk it chose to adopt, namely that the proposal may never be approved. It disingenuously seeks to circumvent the timing prohibition set forth in the order by claiming that it needs to recoup the costs now because of delays in the SEQR process, which it says are a result of obstruction and, quote, political machinations on the part of elected officials, nearby municipalities, and others, rather than its own ill-considered selection of an unproven method for a long-term water supply, without any consideration of less expensive alternatives, including better water management and conservation, and its own lack of cooperation, transparency, and disclosure. Nowhere in that order is it indicated that it is the ratepayers who must pay a premium rather than the company itself that chose to pursue the desalination plant. In fact, the 2010 order specifically notes that at a later date, we will have an opportunity to consider the costs, rate treatment, and the prudence of the company's actions. Clearly, the onus always was and remains on the company to incur the costs and risks associated with this proposal itself. The order clearly demonstrates that moving forward with the desalination plant was at the company's own risk and was far from a foregone conclusion. Therefore, the company had no reasonable basis to think that it could spend money indiscriminately and charge it back to the ratepayers with impunity, or that the project would be rubber-stamped in a cursory and expedited SEQR review process. The risk of delay and disapproval is all its own. The surcharge is prohibited by the terms of the order, and the ratepayer should not be made to indemnify the company for the risk it took on itself in pursuing the unprecedented and unneeded proposal for an environmentally harmful and overly costly desalination plant on the Hudson River. As already stated, only just, reasonable, and prudently incurred costs may be recouped from taxpayers. United Water is seeking to recover millions of dollars it imprudently and unreasonably laid out for thousands of hours of research, attorneys' fees. Can I conclude? And so clearly the strategy is evidently to throw a proposal on the table, impose the costs of vetting the feasibility on the ratepayers rather than its own shareholders, where the financial responsibility lies. So in conclusion, any requested surcharge is clearly prohibited by the plain language of the order, and the petition must be denied. Any surcharge allowance would be improper, since United Water shareholders should bear the cost of vetting the feasibility of the project. Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for being here.
Who can hear this? Okay, so we need to work on our microphone skills over here. Mrs. Jindella? Can you hold the microphone like I am?
I can't thank the various groups enough for the relentless work to defeat this desal plant. It seems to me that United Water has legally found a way to monetize a stupid idea, and I can't figure out how a judge can determine whether or not United Water deserves any type of increase. I hope we can exit this merry-go-round without too much damage. While doing some research, I learned since 2011, 7.7 million gallons of crude oil, known as bomb trains, travel daily through the Hudson Valley, along and across tributaries of the Hudson River. One drop of oil pollutes an area of an entire football field. The federal government passed a law stating a railroad cannot reject a rail shipment. This is their way of pushing highly explosive oil distribution to the Northeast without our permission. These trains pass directly through the area of the desal plant. A crude oil derailment anywhere along the Hudson would completely foul the plant and render it inoperable. There is no way to clean out that mess. So the $200 million+ investment we paid for will be lost. Any water coming from that plant after a spill will be toxic and carcinogenic, no matter what they say. There will be no clean source of drinking water in Rockland County, other than the sources we currently use. So why not improve our current water system and forget the desal plant?
Hello, my name is Connie Coker, and I very much appreciate this opportunity to stand with many of you, most of you, to say that I also oppose this rate hike. I think my favorite phrase of the day is monetize a stupid idea. That was the greatest phrase. I mean, it's monopoly capitalism at its finest, monetize a stupid idea. You know, I had the privilege of serving in the Rockland County Legislature for 6 years, and I heard hundreds of hours of expert testimony. I mean, I was thinking today that Bob Dylan deserves an honorary PhD just on Lake DeForest alone, and that if you, and that if you know, so this has been, what is being presented today has been being talked about for so many years, and I think that what you were saying about that it feels like, again, we have to come again and say the same things that our activist experts have been saying all that time. I join with them. I very much appreciate getting to be here with you. Thank you.
I'll be short because I really don't have much else to add. Thank you, Supervisor, for having this opportunity tonight. I just don't understand the whole thing. I was at a wedding 2 weekends ago talking to a friend who lives up in Massachusetts and is involved in municipal affairs up there. And I was trying to explain to him what was going on, that there's this water company that is trying to impose a surcharge on us for a facility, a plant that most people don't want, that may never be built, and they're not really adequately explaining what they spent the money on. And when I told him what the plant was to get the water from the Hudson River, he thought I was pulling his leg, because he grew up in Yonkers, and he said, "You're going to drink water from the Hudson River." I said, "That's what the plan was, yeah." So I don't know, I think it's, with what's happening, it's more than unfair, it's unconscionable. I think it's a classic bamboozle, and I ask that the PSC reject the surcharge request.
I think the surcharge has been adequately covered. It was unnecessary. It was not transparent. Forget about it. I'm here to speak about the desalination plant. Assuming everything goes perfectly and there is no oil spill and nothing else happens. So let me give you my quick credentials. Before I retired, I was a chemist my whole life, and the last 12 years was spent in water chemistry, both potable and non-potable. There is no way to clean the water by desalination, particularly since it's so close to Indian Point. I have 2 cousins who died of pancreatic cancer because they lived in an area where they pulled a stunt like that. So if New York City can pipe in water from Ashokan Reservoir in Ulster County, if we should need the water, we certainly don't need Hudson River water. That's all I want to say.
Thanks for having us tonight, Andy. And I time myself, so I'll be under 5. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Tom O'Reilly. I'm an environmental engineer, and I've been lived in Rockland for 57 years. And I've been a member of the Orangetown Environmental Committee for 6 years, and also the Rockland Water Coalition for 6 years since its inception. And I must say that, first off, this $56.8 million surcharge request is ridiculous, ludicrous, and it's almost even humorous, as it's just so absurd. And I must say that I really resent having to spend another evening dealing with this United Water nightmare. After all, it's been 6 years since we formed the Rockland Coalition, right after we heard United Water's presentation on the desal at the Suffern Library on May 21st, 2008. Yes, 6 years and 1 day ago today. I remember it vividly when Steve Goodsmith of United Water kept saying that Rockland has droughts. I kept shaking my head because, and that evening I stood up and told my Santa Barbara personal desal story for the first time at a public hearing here in Rockland, where in Santa Barbara in the 80s when I lived there, they had a 5-year drought. For 2 years, they didn't have one drop of water. I remember 90 degrees every day in January. After work at the research center, I could go to the beach, being in New York, where I said, this is great, going to the beach in January. But it got old after a few years. So wealthy Santa Barbara said, no choice, 5-year drought. They built a desal. Then it rained. Like it's been raining here for a few days. It's going to rain all next week, too. They built a desal, and then it rained. They kept it on standby idle for 8 years, just on expensive high maintenance of the reverse osmosis equipment. And finally, wealthy Santa Barbara said, we can't even afford to keep this on standby. They dismantled it and shipped it and sold it to Saudi Arabia, where they have real droughts. You probably heard me tell this story many times. So when I think about what's going on here with United Water and droughts, I mean, so much for the need, you know? In my opinion, Rockland doesn't have a water shortage problem. We have a flooding problem and a false artificial water shortage. This is a matter of trust. In 2008, United Water's DEIS was called, quote, incomplete by the DEC. There was a lack of accountability and absolutely no transparency. United Water's been stonewalling ever since. The New York State DEC said there was deficient and misleading, quote, flaws in United Water's report to the PSC. That was back in 2008. We can talk about the so-called water shortage, but keep in mind that evidence of United Water's excessive releases of 6 to 9 million gallons a day to United Water New Jersey customers is paid for by us, the Rockland residents and taxpayers. And United Water wants a $7.5 million desal plant. I mean, and now United Water also wants a 24.5% rate increase, which is infuriating since they had a 72% increase in revenues in the last 6 years, which is 7 times the rate of inflation. This is ridiculous. In my opinion, it's unregulated greed, the 72% revenue increase. It's like the taxpayer bailout of a Wall Street bank.
and in my opinion, it's what's destroying this country. It's time to say enough. No more already. This has got to stop now. And now United Water wants us to pay the $57 million already spent. That's 1/3 of the $189 billion cost of the desal. $57 million for nothing. Shoot, I'm sorry. 57 minutes. Yeah. They've been paying the $57 million for lobbying, the massive public relations campaign with relentless advertising to convince the Rockland residents of the so-called need. The PSC said it doesn't consider these to be legitimate costs. And it's infuriating that the U.S., that us volunteers have to spend another evening of our life while United Water's reps here get paid big bucks to be here. And in summary, I'll skip something else, but just to wrap it up, okay. Face it, United Water took a big high-stakes, high-risk gamble and lost. And the municipal consortium said there should be no rate increase. I disagree with us that say there should not be a penny, because I disagree. I feel United Water should reimburse us for the priceless, precious time that's been taken from us, from hundreds of volunteers and the 34 organizations of the Rockland Coalition, and for the thousands and thousands of hours that's irreplaceable in the last 6 years with this BS. If you're gonna gamble, fine, just gamble with somebody else's money. And also just cut back on your corporate profit margin and have the company and the shareholders absorb the loss, not us.
Thank you, Tom. So I see we have some folks standing up in the back. We have about 6 chairs over here, usually used for the jury. You're welcome to use them. Our next speaker is Ted Aron.
My name is Ted Aron. I've been in the county about 45 years, and I'm the president of the Rockland County ARP chapter. Believe it or not, there is a chapter of ARP in Rockland County, and I am the president. I'm also a chemistry professor at Bergen Community College, retired, thank goodness. So I have a few credentials here. As president of the Rockland County ARP chapter, I'm very much concerned about the proposed surcharge of $56.8 million requested by United Water to pay part of the construction of the pilot desalination plant. Now, you've been talking about legal costs, lobbying, and so forth. And I'm talking about the actual construction here. Is there a need for it? There already exists approximately 16,000 desalination plants operating worldwide. As indicated on their website, Suez Environment, the parent company of United Water, has built more than 255 of these plants themselves. The company already has lots of experience in this field. And the plant they propose here is not using experimental equipment. Why is there a need for the pilot project other than public relations? If they really need to test the Hudson River, they can easily take Hudson River water, ship it over to one of their 255 desal plants and have it tested. Okay? We in Rockland County don't need to pay $56.8 million for a sales pitch, particularly one whose cost will seriously impact senior citizens on fixed incomes who live in Rockland. Based upon the charge being requested, each Rockland ratepayer will add approximately $5 to their monthly water bill just for this item. Now I'm talking to the PSC. It may not sound like a lot of money to you, but if a person who is on fixed income and is counting every penny, it becomes a serious problem. This surcharge, which is approximately 8.08%, requested together with the 28.9% water rate increase, also requested, adds up to a total of 36.9% increase. It is no wonder that United Water wanted to break up all their various increased demands. Once you put all of them together, it becomes totally obscene. If the PSC allows this charge to stand, they stand guilty, along with United Water, of irresponsible behavior which may drive some senior citizens already in dire straits into poverty. Given the fact that United Water is losing over 20% of its water through leakage, why in the world would you give them permission to build the desalination plant to make up for the loss? It's like trying to fill a bathtub with water at the same time as letting the water go down the drain. Before you even consider their proposal, let them demonstrate via action that they are serious about fixing their leaky pipes, and if a need still persists, let's deal with it at that time. To top it off, in the words of Michael Pointing, Vice President of United Water, quote, "This is a significant and should be considered in relation to the..." Oh, that me? That's it? Okay. Okay. Based upon these numbers, they're asking for a 100% increase in your water rates. Bottom line, if they build this plant, your water rates will double. Besides, okay, as it is, United Water has the third highest water rate in the country. You may ask then, if these costs are real, who should pay? Irresponsible, frivolous, and undocumented costs and charges belong to shareholders, not to the ratepayer. Thank you.
I'll be quick. First, I just would like to congratulate everybody in the room, and in particular the Rockland Water Coalition, for what appears to be a success. I wanted to go on the record. Is this microphone working? I wanted to go on the record against the surcharge. I have 6 reasons. Very quickly, I'm going to just read what they are. You're probably familiar with 5 out of the 6. You may not have heard the 6th, and I think you'll find it interesting. The first reason is because we all know New York has plenty of water, and there is no water shortage in Rockland County. The second reason is we have evidence that New Jersey is getting our water. The third reason I'm against it is because United Water has evidence of wastage, leaking pipes that were already mentioned and alluded to. The fourth reason I'm against it is United Water has made no serious effort having to do with water conservation here in Rockland County. The fifth reason I'm against it is we have significant evidence of mismanagement at United Water, which has been mentioned over and over again. And the sixth reason I'm against it, and this one you may not have heard very often, and in fact it was not listed in Suzanne Barclay's list, her breakdown of all their expenses. However, we know, because we looked it up, that United Water has spent $100,000 influencing Rockland County elected officials, and therefore they do not need a rate increase or a surcharge increase. Thank you.
Dr. Maxwell.
I'm Sister Dorothy Maxwell, a Blauvelt Dominican, and I just want to thank you, Andy, and I just want to thank all of you people who have been at the meetings galore since this became a hot button issue, and it still is, and we're sticking with it, and I'm so proud to be with you. I just want to say that, you know, basically anybody is against the surcharge and against anything that this poor water company is thrusting upon us. But I just see that the religious in the area, we're working on 3 issues. We're working on no desalinization plant. We're working against fracking. What fracking is going to do to our water supply scares me. And then we have the 3rd strike of the Entergy Corporation, which is running Indian Point. And these are the 3 key issues that I want to bring to the fore and that I think we all continue to get educated on. I just had the wonderful experience, though, when we were teaching one night with our sisters. There's a great YouTube, if you look it up in TED. In Peru, they have this large billboard, and they are taking the humidity out of the air in Peru, and the people are getting water. But I don't know if United Water would care to pursue that.
Gail Pisha.
Hi, my name is Gail Pisha, and I've lived in Rockland County my entire life. And I'm asking the Public Service Commission to consider the following in making a decision regarding United Water's request for a surcharge to recoup the costs that the company has spent for planning costs related to its proposed desalination plant. I think it's important for the commissioners to consider 3 kinds of questions in making their decision, going from specific to general. First, are the costs United Water expects the ratepayers to pay for reasonable and appropriate? I resent being asked to pay for lavish advertising costs and money that the company spent to lobby governors and legislators in Albany about a plan that's not sustainable nor cost effective. If the proposed plan is so clearly the only viable option, why did the company need to spend so much money to try to convince everybody of that? Second, did the company act in the best interest of its customers by stubbornly sticking to its desalination plan in the face of emerging information that indicated there might be cheaper, safer, quicker options to increase water supply in Rockland should it be necessary? In 2010, the results of the U.S. Geological Survey were available and demand was dropping, so the company should have paused to reconsider alternatives that were less expensive to the ratepayers. I believe most private companies would reevaluate plans periodically in such circumstances, but United Water continued to rack up expenses trying to railroad through its ill-conceived plan. The public should not be charged for this reckless spending. And third is the question of whether ratepayers should be obligated to pay for planning costs for a project for which shareholders of the company will get the profits. This is especially pertinent since the planning costs constitute almost 40% of the price of $153 million for stage 1 of the desal plant. I'm told that typically companies spend more like 8% of the projected price of a project on planning. So I ask the commissioners, why are we being asked to pay $60 million when United Water just gave its shareholders a 50% increase in dividends? So the fact is that United Water came up with its desalination plan just 1 month after the PSC mandated that the company develop a long-term water supply project in response to a low reservoir situation that eventually was found to be caused by huge releases to New Jersey that the company blamed on a broken valve. Then United Water continued to spend money on planning costs way in excess of typical amounts, even when other companies would have paused to reevaluate the situation. And now we, the ratepayers, are being asked to foot the bill for planning what is clearly a priority project for Suez to get a foothold for desalination in a wet area where it's not necessary in order to control this precious resource in the future and earn huge profits for its shareholders. So I ask the PSC to consider these questions and decide that the shareholders should be the ones to pay for the planning costs, not the ratepayers. Thank you.
Perry Dentico. And after Perry Dentico will be Daniel Moriso.
Good evening, and thank you for coming, everyone. I'm Perry Dentico. I live in West Nyack, New York, right in the heart of United Water's floods. I want you to know that I'm willing to begin paying the $56 million surcharge as soon as United Water pays my condominium complex the $105,000 we spent to fix our building after they flooded us after our property was dry following Hurricane Irene. Now, there was a great concentration of information at the beginning of this meeting that came from this group here. And I don't want to say anything negative because it was fantastic what I was hearing. But, sir, the concept of United Water being transparent with information, to me, is preposterous. They are a cancer of a company.
Could you use the microphone,
And-
please?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You can hold it if you want.
Thank you. A few months ago, I attended a meeting in Suffern that was conducted by Supervisor St. Lawrence. This gentleman was here, and it was on the subject of either having the public take over the water supply for Rockland County or having it turned over to another company that could manage it better than United Water. This process has been going on for so long, and it seems like it stalls and stalls and stalls. I go to meetings, and there are DEC reps there. The next meetings are Public Service Commission people. They're not well versed on what happened at previous meetings. It's just the same things rehashed over and over again. And I, too, am tired of spending so much time and effort in fighting something that seems so obvious to have the need to be put to an end. Now, aside from the floods that United Water carelessly bombed West Nyack with, they misused fungicides in Lake DeForest and were fined by the DEC, one of the organizations that was in the decision-making process whether to approve the desal plant. I've mentioned it at a couple of meetings, but I never gave anybody the information. I'm giving 2 copies of that article to the staff here. I noticed this winter when I turned on my faucets, constantly there was a smell of chlorine. I called Nyack Water about it. They supply United Water's water to West Nyack residents. And they said, yes, when the temperatures get cold, we need to increase the amount of chlorine in the water. So the report we receive once a year about parts per million in water, it might tell you how much chlorine is typically in the water, but this chlorine amount had to exceed those parts per million. If I had a well, which I did in a home in Pennsylvania years ago, and I wanted to test the well water, if I send it to a lab, the first thing they do is open the water and smell it, and if there's a trace of chlorine in that smell in that water, they will not test it. Because prior to testing, you have to disinfect your well, which requires using chlorine. Also, instead of, I use a humidifier in my forced air heating system in my home, and I only used it for 3 months this winter as opposed to typically 5. There is, at the end of the season, some mineral scaling in the humidifier, which I typically clean out. But I took pictures this year, which I planned on bringing to Nyack Water and saying, what is in my water that wasn't there in previous years? Here are those photographs. You may not be able to make them out, but it is some evidence toward my argument, and our argument, I should say. We all know by now, or many of us know, that the DEC has regulations in their hunting and fishing guide for pregnant women and children 15 and under not to eat fish from the Hudson River south of Corinth. What does that tell you about the water? Yes, there's a nuclear plant and everything else, okay? And I'm glad that the sister from Dominican College mentioned fracking, because 2 or 3 years ago in Haverstraw, I brought up the idea of fracking. Our good drinking water in this country is being stolen to frack, and we are given the second-rate product, or the second-rate product is trying to be forced on us. What part of no does the Public Service Commission, the DEC, and state government not understand here? This should not go on another minute. Moving from today to 2020 means nothing to me. It's going to be a battle down the road, too. It needs to be severed right here. The United Water needs to be put in their place and told that they are here to serve us, not us serve them, by loading their pockets with our money, with our time, with our effort and our energy and our reports. Meeting after meeting, we dedicate ourselves to this, and we're missing out on the precious things in life that we should be doing instead of fighting these inconsiderate and unconcerned corporate giants that are simply trying to squash us. Now, that phone hasn't rung yet. I'm going to look over my list.
It just did. You
All
didn't
right,
hear
that
it
gives
because
me
you were on a roll.
58 seconds.
This man's on a roll.
I do not ever expect transparency from United Water. I do not want to partner with them. They are not the type of company I would partner with. The current quality of water is horrific. If they have a desal plant and have something else to watch, the quality of water will go down. The maintenance of the water control and releases. I thought my voice was loud enough without it.
No, it's because the audio system goes to television.
I'm
And if
sorry,
you're not using a microphone, they can't hear you on TV.
I'm very sorry. Basically, they cannot manage water now. I called them to ask what they were doing in preparation of Tropical Storm Lee, and I told the person I spoke with on the phone, my home was flooded. I want to know what measures you're taking. He asked me where I lived and then said, why did you buy a house in a flood zone? That was his answer. I was shocked by that. And I said, okay, you are the enemy, and I'm coming for the kill. Thank you very much.
Daniel Moriso.
My name is Daniel Morrison, and I'm a resident of Congers, and I'm a bit embarrassed to take up your time because everything I'm going to say you probably already know. But I received emails from the Rockland Water Coalition. I received emails from the Rockland Water Coalition asking me to come here and speak out against the desalination plant and the surcharge, so that's what I'm doing. I have several reasons for opposition to the desalination plant and to any surcharges connected with its expenses. In the first place, desalination is a very expensive and energy-intensive process that is suitable for arid areas like Saudi Arabia, but not for an area like Rockland, which normally receives adequate rainfall. Secondly, the Hudson River water that would be processed by the desalination plant is contaminated with radioactivity from Indian Point, and this radioactivity would not be removed in the desalination process. Thirdly, the need for a major new source of water for Rockland County has not been convincingly established. The study that purportedly identified this need was conducted during a period of temporary drought and is seriously flawed. This whole issue needs to be revisited, and apparently is going to be revisited at long last. In addition, more efficient use of existing resources can meet Rockland's needs for the foreseeable future. Construction of the hugely expensive desalination plant will lead to a steep increase in water rates, which will be difficult for many residents to afford. And as an illustration of that, we have this massive surcharge that United Water is already requesting. Finally, the desalination plant is overwhelmingly opposed by the residents and elected officials of this county, and United Water should not be allowed to force this ill-conceived project on an unwilling community in its pursuit of greater profits. Thank you.
Grace Jordan. It's either Jordan or Gordon. Grace? All right. Ann Brennan.
Good evening. I was on the internet today and I came across an article called The Birth, Growth, and Decline of Multinational Water Companies by David Hall and Emmanuel Lobina. There are two people who work at the Public Services International Research Unit at the University of Greenwich in England. And they were talking about the private companies, in historical context first. I'm trying to plant a seed, I think is what I'm trying to do here. The two companies which still dominate private water were both created in the 19th century. General, and my French is not so good, General des Eaux, now part of Veolia, Veolia, was created in 1853 by charter of the Emperor Napoleon III. And the other company, Lyonnaise des Eaux, now the core of Suez Environment, was created in 1880. And by the end of the 20th century, those two companies, with a smaller one called SAUR, they controlled over 70% of the French water services in France. But since then, there's been a movement in France by municipalities and by the government to take back the water companies. And they've lost a lot of their holdings, the two big private companies. Suez is one of them. In France itself, competition has been very minor. If you have the contract, you could kind of keep it. Even though it comes up, nobody else bids against you, and so you keep that same contract year after year. No non-French company has ever won a single contract. So I say to myself, if France is so concerned and won't let any foreign country or company be in charge of their water, they only want, in fact, the French government has bought stock in Suez and the other company, and a lot of the towns and villages have taken back their water. So they don't want any foreign country or company to be in charge of their water. I think we should think about that too. And yeah, they have reduced the role of the private sector, the public sector, I'm sorry, in any country, and they wanted, Suez I'm talking about now, the parent company of United Water, wants to promote internationalism and reduce the role of the public sector. So they have spent money to maximize, to say how important it is to have a private sector. They have publications and conferences to deliver this message as much as they can. And I found out today that the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, both funded by the UN, have started saying that these either developing countries or any countries, it could be Greece or Italy, that want money from them, have to agree to privatization as a condition of their loans. So you can see where this is going. If a country wanted such loans, it would have to privatize, whether it's water or any other resource. So, and the other thing is that the IMF and the World Bank will also give lots of money, loans to Suez, at very low interest rates, so they can, develop wherever they choose to. But I found something else interesting. Private companies have found that their existing markets are being eroded by a new wave of municipalizations, most dramatically in France itself. This was led by the city of Paris, which decided to municipalize its water services from January 2010, after two 25-year concessions had been given to Suez and Veolia, and they had expired. So here, Suez, a French company, has lost the contract. I just want to quickly finish this about Paris. Paris found out that they were driven by the political view of the ruling Socialist Green Coalition that vital public services should be in public hands, which I agree with, and by an economic assessment that a publicly run service would be cheaper. This was demonstrated in the first year when the city saved 35 million euros and was able to reduce water prices by 8%. Wouldn't it be nice to reduce our bills by 8 or 10%? So thank you very much.
Yeah, sound it out. I think it says Gerald Wagner. Did I get anywhere near correct? All right, thank you very much.
Good evening to everybody. I have a background in engineering and company management for the last 40 years or so. I'm still working globally, half my time in Europe and half my time here. So I think I can clearly say I have some kind of broad overview about what's going on. Thanks for the story about Paris. I can confirm this because I work in Paris also. There are two things that I would like to stress out a little bit here. One, thank you very much for giving us some kind of data there. I think the transparency is a problem insofar as I'm used to making decisions on investments very clearly about facts and data. And in this case, what I'm missing is not just the question about 25% more water usage from lawn sprinkling, but a general overview, where is the water being used and how? If we say it's large companies, then we have to differentiate, for instance, between processed water, where they build a product. It would be nice if they would make some beer. They need a lot of water to do that. Or if they just use it for cooling. If we split out the part for cooling, there are other solutions for cooling, and then we could say, how can we foster from a governmental point of view, to get those guys doing something on their cooling water use? One issue, right? Another issue would be small and mid-sized companies. That is probably mostly process use. And then there's the residential use. Now, on the residential use, you have a very clear point, and you brought it up, that generally the usage is going down for certain technological reasons. One is, for instance, laundry machines take much less water now than they used five years ago, right? Toilets, the same kind of thing. And being the Europeans being strapped very much on their resources compared to here, because the population is much more dense, we can learn something from what's going on over there, including, and I have to say this, how the Dutch, for instance, get their water supply. The Dutch take their water to a large extent from the Rhine River. Now, that's a river. And we have to understand how they do this, because there must be something that's being done. Suez has more than 200 plants worldwide. There are other examples over there in Europe where they come from, and it's a French mother company. They should not charge any of the $29 million for engineering and pilot plants. The thing is there. They just have to use it and not come as this is a newborn baby that they have to develop. So there's something where I have to say, let's start on the modeling side, and our politicians should clearly ask for, give us the modeling. Where's the water going? How did you model this thing going forward? Not just by just extrapolating from nowadays to let's say 10 years forward. That's wrong, because technology changes the picture. So we need facts and data, we need modeling. And we also need some kind of clear planning then of those costs that is associated with it, learning from what's done elsewhere in the world, not just here. Let's reinvent the wheel. I'm a facts and data guy. I would like to see that data and that transparency. Thanks.
Doris Madronero. Oh, there she is. After Doris will be Janet Elliott.
Good evening. A lot of familiar faces here. Am I audible back there? Okay. Yep, great. Supervisor Stewart, thank you for hosting this. Suzanne, I know you've put a lot of work in this, thanks. Familiar faces. I'm a party in this surcharge case, as some of the folks in the room are as well. I just signed up as a resident citizen who's been active on these issues for a long time, just to really get a sense. And part of, during the evidentiary hearing, Mr. Duffy, on the surcharge case, just to make some issues known, there are 3 pending cases. This is only one, the surcharge, and only the town of Ramapo, unless the county, and there's been other moves, has hired Mr. Duffy to represent us. I happen to be a resident of Montebello, but so thank you for your good service there. On the rate case. But to the Public Service Commission, this is so fragmented, but you're not fragmenting the public. We get it. We represent 2/3 of their customer base. We are the lion's share, as commissioners have stated. The county, this is a clarion call to do a better job. Since 1999, there was a resolution on the books. We heard about that. And Chairman Wolf, it's great that we're moving forward on this to get efficiency and also, as we just heard, transparency. We've got to know where the water is going. For United Water to say we have to pay above and beyond on their cost 10.7 rate of return to them for bad management just is not sensible. We don't have transparency. Just on the simple parts of information. Now, here's the thing. If you read some material that they send out to you, United Water, through what we're paying, what they want us to pay for their contractors to do media blitzes, otherwise propaganda, plus pay 10.7% rate of return on top of that so they can extend that out. If you don't like what they're saying or you don't understand it, call the Public Service Commission and let them know, what is this? What is the substance of the material that they are putting out there? They're talking about we need a desal plant. Well, I want to read something that was passed out, as I said earlier, as part of evidence in the evidentiary hearing that just took place in Albany on this particular surcharge case. And it was minutes, a transcript, and it's online. You can find this online, so there's nothing confidential about it. Thursday, July 15th, 2010. And it took place up in Albany. And the speaker here that I'll read this briefly is Chairman Brown, at the time the chair of Public Service Commission. Now we have Audrey Zibelman, Chair Audrey Zibelman. But Mr. Brown states, I have a question. I guess it goes generally to the water people. Obviously, one of the issues in this that we're not, as I understand, what we're really not dealing with in this case is the next increment. Whatever they're going to need next to meet their supply, whether it's a desalination plant or, I think, Bill, you described a variety of proposals that other people suggested. After spending our lives and the last 2 years dealing with electricity efficiency and gas efficiency, I haven't heard that same sort of discussion as much in terms of the use of water. And does that get taken into account? Will that be taken into account comparing efficiency measures? And I assume you know low flow toilets and all the other water efficiency things that are out there. Does that get compared to a new supply source as much in water as it's been kind of emphasized in the other areas? This is Mr. Brown speaking, not me. So, just kidding, just kidding. So, and then in quote again, another question he poses, hey, if efficiency costs less than building a new power plant, let's spend the money on efficiency. Again and again, we could go on ad nauseum, and many of us have, most of the people in the room, about that. But Public Service Commission, it's a clarion call to Rockland, but also to you, to coordinate the information. If the chair of the Public Service Commission at the time in 2010 is questioning whether conservation effectively, efficiency, was part of the equation that went into this, why? Are they then just saying, go ahead, bamboozle the public with a 139 and growing plus project? It's just simply wrong thinking. So again, we represent 2/3 of that customer base. Don't forget it. You have the authority and the power to go out there. When you hear information that they're sending out on the airwaves or read information, contact the Public Service Commission and let them know this is bunk. They didn't support any with regard to transparency, the charges. As far as I'm concerned, it's propaganda, not outreach and education about conservation. The county can do better, we can do better, and certainly the state has to do better in coordinating how they look at Public Service Commission hearings and information that comes to them. Mr. Duffy, you gave it a wonderful exhibit. We were laughing almost, it's not at our expense, of course, about the deli costs up there, you know, on the list of what the expenses were to be charged back to us. And when you trend that out, you're paying over $100 for a bologna sandwich. So it's just simply wrong that United Water continues to get away with their bad behavior. So thank you for getting out there, and do speak up again and again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Janet Elliott. Is Janet Elliott here? There she is. Don't forget to speak into the microphone, okay? Right up close.
Hello there. Is this working? Oh, I'm Janet Elliott. I'm born and raised in Haverstraw, and maybe like some of the rest of you, I'm old enough to remember when water didn't cost anything. But I do know over the last 6 years or so that I've been retired, I think my bill was $24 every quarter whenever it comes through. Then I got to see it go up to $35, and now I think it's $75. So that's a whale of an increase, and we're not even talking about the desalination plant or the surcharge. It's hard for me to understand why the Public Service Commission doesn't just say no. All the things that were cited here tonight seem so obvious to all of us. Why doesn't it seem obvious to them? And so I sincerely hope they will hear us. Thanks.
Alan Levin. Is Alan still here? Oh, there we go. After Alan is Sheila Schneider.
Yes, hi, I'm Alan Levin. I live up in Tompkins Cove, way up there, where we get our water from wells. And so I won't be paying the surcharge. But I am interested in this, very interested in this, because of two things, two issues that I wanted to bring forward here. One is justice, and one is survival. The justice issue has been well addressed. I think the fact that United Water aggressively pursued a desal plant option when any reasonable person could see that this was not to the benefit of the county. This was not to the benefit of the people, the ratepayers, the people who live here. The survival issue is this. Right now, every human being, citizens of Rockland County, Americans, all of the human family, has to consider in every decision that we make, every day, every dollar we spend, every time we turn on a switch, every time we turn on the tap, and not only individuals, but especially government agencies and institutions and corporations have to consider the fact that humanity is facing the biggest crisis it's ever faced in the history of human beings since we've been here. And it's not only humans, but all species of the planet are threatened by climate change. And any decision that we make that increases that makes an option to increase the use of petroleum products, electricity comes from petroleum products. That's what this plant does. It increases the use of energy rather than taking the other options which would allow us to get water from conservation and so forth. That's the decision that has to be made. And again, any decision that we make that increases our reliance on petroleum products at this time is a disaster. We have to oppose it. And so I'm in agreement with everybody that's spoken here so far that the PSC, please, use a little sanity here.
Sheila Schneider. After Mrs. Schneider is Isadora Guggenheim.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, wait, I better hold it. I'm vehemently opposed to United Water getting any monies back for any project they have developed, especially through a rate increase. My main reason is that, first of all, they're charged with providing potable water. They are not going to provide potable water. They're going to provide water that has tritium in it, which cannot be removed by reverse osmosis. There have been a lot of radiological studies done, and there's a correlation between tritium and cumulative genetic injury. Successive generations, a reduction in relative brain weight, an increased reabsorption of embryos. There's even a possible correlation between tritium intake and Down syndrome. It goes on and on. It's not a good thing to be drinking. The second thing is, I haven't heard this brought up, that reverse osmosis water is different. It's acidic. It has an acidic pH. And like distilled water, it does not supply the body with the needed trace minerals and may have a mild chelating effect. This means that it may remove some vital minerals from the body. So on that basis, I do not feel that they're providing potable water, so they certainly shouldn't get paid. The second thing is I have problems with the PSC in that I don't feel like they're, shall I say, following their own guidelines. It took me a while to find their guidelines, but there's one section where it says it prohibits United Water from recouping monies spent on advertising, lobbying, etc., by raising water rates. So I think it's been alluded to here how much has been spent on that. But as people have said, it also, their accounting, lack of accounting is like ludicrous. I mean, I doubt that anybody in this room who got a bill from Visa and it said simply, pay $800, would pay that bill. You need an accounting of what they're doing.
What a great person to follow. I'm Dr. Isadora Guggenheim, and I'm a physician who specializes with environmental medicine. So I want to bring up a phrase that has stayed with me. When I was in medical school, the head of World Health Organization came in and said, you can evaluate the health of a country by the treatment of its water and its women. And so we can still take that and use it in this context as well. I see people who have environmental exposures and what the health impact is. And as you so put it well with the tritium and other contaminants that would be in the water, which then gets expressed in different kinds of cancers, autoimmune disease, and of course the people who are the most susceptible are children and elderly. And we all have genetics, and all of us are mosaics, and we have what are called genetic polymorphisms. So you don't really know how that exposure is going to affect you, and how that will manifest, whether that's going to be osteoporosis or pancreatic cancer or asthma or whatever it might be. And I'm very much opposed to the desalination point because of this and because of the human health impact.
Martha Schulwolf. Is Martha here? Not seeing Martha. All right. Margie Turin. Margie still here? And after Margie is Jocelyn DiCrescenzo.
I'm Margie Turin, and I'll be submitting written comments later, but I really wanted it noted that I was at this hearing, and I'm really disappointed that the PSC didn't find it necessary to be present for this hearing. I continue to be disappointed with the PSC. I'm disappointed that they didn't choose to combine the three United Water cases that are so very deeply and obviously intertwined. The requested rate increase, the surcharge for the pilot plant, and the issue for a need for a new long-term water supply. The issue tonight is about recouping millions of dollars that were spent on a pilot project that's been under question for an extensive period of time. The business practices of United Water have been under review, and it's extremely disturbing that we would even consider giving that company additional revenues when there's been a recommendation for a forensic audit by a state consumer agency. The lack of transparency begs the question of whether United Water is able to manage any kind of budget. We don't even know what their budget is because they aren't providing the figures. I'd say it's pretty obvious that they're not able to manage, not only in the past, in the present, or in the future, any kind of expenditures on our behalf. The pilot project was based on faulty 2006 projections, and their current use projections continue to be erroneous. We should not be expected to use our own hard-earned funds to repay expenditures that are unable to be reviewed and understood based on a flawed premise and that were spent with willful disregard for us, the ratepayer. The PSC should not even consider this surcharge. Thank you.
Jocelyn?
Hello, can everybody hear me? No, can you hear me
Stay
now?
very close. There you go.
Oh, very close, okay. First of all, I want to thank you, Andy, for arranging this opportunity for many of us to speak. I also will be putting in written comments at some point later on, and so thank you very much. And I respectfully ask the PSC Commission adjudicator to please take notice. Can I take this off? Yes. Yeah. To please take notice that I, Jocelyn DiCrescenzo, Valley Cottage, suggests that the stockholders of and the investors in United Water, Suez Environmental, pay for their own water supply surcharge recovery rates and costs on case 13-W-0246 to the tune of approximately $60.3 million. And that therefore the stakeholders of Rockland County, who have time and again through due diligence presented factual and true information as to the lack of necessity for a desalination plant, should not and will not have to bear the truly horrific financial burden of this beast which United Water has created through what I believe to be duplicitous manipulation of old information and only to pad their own pockets. I say not a single dime for any length of time. Thank you. And by the way, this sort of mock-up redo of a Suez water was taken from the Hudson River on October 3rd of last year for the other hearings. This is what it still looks like, okay? We don't want to be drinking this. Thank you.
Jacqueline Dreschler. All right. The next person, no, we're going in order, is Addie Ducey. There's only 2 other people signed in.
She said she'll be sending in written comments. She had to leave.
Okay. And we have instructions on the table outside on how to submit comments. Great. The next is George Potanovic. George? And after George will be Barbara Pollitt.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is George Potanovic. I live in Stony Point. I'm the president of the Stony Point Action Committee for the Environment and also a member of the Rockland Water Coalition, and I'm a United Water customer. We heard a lot tonight about poor management and accounting practices, lack of oversight by United Water and the PSC that has been the cause of much of this $56.8 million in expense. But instead of accepting that responsibility, United Water has chosen to blame delays for this project on the public, for questioning the viability of this project, as well as elected officials that it says did not make best efforts to facilitate the approval of its desalination plant. My question is, why should United Water be permitted to collect the $56.8 million or $60 million for this ill-conceived desalination plant for expenses it says it incurred over the past 7 years? I am suggesting that United Water aggressively pressed forward with spending huge amounts of money when they knew in the early stages that there was sufficient water, or at least a possibility of more water than we knew at the time, and that the expenses were going to far surpass what they had predicted. What I did is I came up with a timeline to sort of give you a little orientation, and I'm going to hit upon some of the highlights of this timeline as to when things actually occurred. We heard about the 2006 Public Service Commission decision that we needed more water, and I think genuinely people believed at the time that we needed more water. But in 1 month after the decision by the Public Service Commission that we had a need for additional water, within 1 month, United Water proposed its desalination plant. We found out now that United Water had been working on this desalination plant since 2003. So you got to wonder whether or not any alternatives at all were considered in the time period between the PSC decision in 2006 and 1 month later when it determined that desalination was the best option that we had in January of 2007. United Water released the draft EIS on its website. EIS is the environmental impact statement, so the public would have a chance to evaluate the environmental impacts. They released that draft in September of 2008. the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation deemed that environmental impact statement to be inadequate and incomplete in November, 2 months later. Incomplete. Now, United Water at the same time in 2009 was spending a lot of money on what it called outreach and education. That's one of the categories in this surcharge case, of which I think is about $5 million, that it spent on print ads and television ads trying to convince us that desalination plant was a good idea and that the plant was needed. When I'm suggesting at that time it was already aware of the fact of the results of the USGS study, which started in 2005. Because it was a partner in that study, by 2009, it was already sharing information with the USGS that our aquifer was actually recharging at a better rate and that the need for water that we had anticipated in 2006 was not as dire as we thought of at that time. In some correspondence with the Department of State indicated in its preliminary DEIS comments that a complete assessment of the proposed project need is of paramount importance and that the DEIS should contain justification for requiring 7.5 million gallons a day of additional potable water. United Water's reaction to that was as follows, that this scoping session, which the DEC entered into, that demanded extraordinary and overly burdensome levels of environmental study, analysis, and evaluation of peripheral topics of questionable relevance. In May of 2009, Klaus Jacobs, who is a geophysicist with Lamont Doherty, had sent in a letter explaining why he felt this scoping session, which was really a more in-depth view or investigation into the details of the DEIS, why he felt that was necessary. He said, in his letter, he said that United Water has chosen a solution to address this potential shortage that has, at best, little concern for sustainability, filled with information that often is only marginally relevant, distracting, sometimes misleading, incomplete, not always up to date, and at times or misinformed, and in some cases is simply wrong. So here's his reaction to the data that United Water had originally provided to us with its original environmental review that we were supposed to use as the basis for deciding whether this was a good project or not. The DEC reviewed United Water's Haverstraw Water Supply Project proposed plan for data collection and analysis in November of 2009.
George, you're wrapping up, right?
Okay, and by that time, by email, by August 5th, 2009, the plan was submitted as being inadequate. Let me just hit a couple more points, if that's okay. In a letter from Andrea Sheeran for the New York State DEC to Sumet Master, who is United Water's engineer, in December of 2010, it was determined that the DEIS was still incomplete. What I'm saying here is that United Water was the cause of its own delays, that it was not something that the public interest in this case or investigation or asking questions caused them a problem, or elected officials that were somehow untrue to their agreement to try to use best efforts. But indeed, United Water had put forth information that was not complete. In fact, its financial data was not complete. People could not figure out what the cost of this project was. So they caused their own problem. A letter from Ellen Jaffe to the New York State DEC called for greater transparency and the real cost to the ratepayers in April of 2012. And the DEIS comments submitted by Rockland Legislature Chair Harriet Cornell called for an evaluation of the sharing agreement between New York and New Jersey and alternatives. The petition opposing the Haverstraw Water Supply Project, 24,000 signatures from Rockland County residents were presented to Governor Cuomo in June of 2012. And a letter from Assemblywoman Jaffe on May of 2012 asked the chair of the Public Service Commission to re-examine the question of need, and they totally refused to do that at the time. We know later that they agreed 1 year later to proceed and actually question the question of need. In May of 2013, 4 towns and 12 villages passed resolutions or drafted letters to Governor Cuomo asking for an issues conference. The letter from the Rockland Water Coalition to County Executive Vanderhoff asked for information regarding the flow, the water flow to New Jersey and the excessive amount of water that we're sending to New Jersey. And the public hearing that was held on October 1st of last year, of 2013, over 1,000 people attended that public hearing that was on the question of need that was held by the Public Service Commission. Al Appleton presented at that hearing, and he said that the United Water had ignored the downward trend of water demand that was national, that was industry-wide, and that he called for more demand-side solutions instead of supply-side solutions, as building a desalination plant would be, which are the more expensive types of solutions. The Public Service Commission hearing in Haverstraw drew another 500 or 600 people the following day on October 2nd. Just two more pieces here. A letter from Rockland County Executive Ed Day in April of this year, of 2014, asks the DEC to re-examine the cost-sharing relationship between United Water New York and United Water New Jersey. Let's remember, these are two arms of the same company. What kind of objectivity do we have here? Okay, Rockland County needs to be part of that discussion. We're not at the table on that issue. Direct testimony from Dan Miller, okay, on April 28th of this year, corrected his original assessment of the project almost 10 years earlier, where he said there was a demand for water, and we believe that he thought that at the time, but that his recent testimony in April stated that United Water, that the demand for water was overprojected, that the demand had actually gone down, and that Rockland County does not have a need for a desalination plant or any other kind of water source, probably until the year 2020 or 2021. The Utility Intervention Unit, which was involved in reviewing this in Albany, asked for a forensic audit of United Water's numbers. We've heard about invoices that didn't have any details, of charges that are totally outrageous. I agree with that and call for the forensic audit and no surcharge increase for United Water. I'm sorry I took so long. Thank you.
Thank you, George. It was well worth listening to. Barbara Pollitt. Say it again.
My name's Barbara Pollitt. I live in Pomona.
Whatever you say.
I'm so proud to be among you.
After Barbara is Bob Dylan. Thank you, Barbara.
And I just feel so astounded and pleased to be part of your company. And I feel appreciative, of course, for the opportunity to speak. I think we're dealing with a lot of very gnarly issues that have to do with overall planning of our county. In Pomona, we faced various different kinds of struggles to push back against corporate greed, to push back against overdevelopment. And I see this whole network of corporate takeover coming to our county. I see it in the push to overdevelop our neighborhood and the Patrick Farm. We've had a recent success in Rosa's efforts to stop the planning board's approvals of certain things going on with the farm development. But the Walmart action at the bottom of my hill is linked to that development on the Patrick Farm, I believe. And I think is also connected to the myth of the desalinization plant need. And I think this whole business of a profit-driven utility is part of our difficulty in our country and in our community. We just put solar panels up on our barn. And my husband said, it's a good thing we're doing this now because the utility companies are doing their best to stop this ability of solar energy to come into our communities for us to cost less. And this whole business of conserving and costing less is not in the interest of Suez. And I think everybody has expressed this outrage that we are being pawns in the development of a monstrous amount of profit for people who don't give a damn about our drinking water. So, you know, I feel like the issue of the Hudson River itself, once you've taken out that salt and those impurities, where are they going? Downriver. That's a brine that nobody wants to be near. And we just won this PCB battle with GE to clean up the Hudson upriver of us. And now we're going to flood the whole remaining valley with a brine of toxic waste. Horrible idea. I want to challenge the Public Service Commission to look at what happens on a cruise ship. Many of us have been cruising, and many of us revel in the idea of a self-contained unit that has many different levels of water purification going on. Our homes could be completely self-sufficient. Our gray water could be revived to help supply us. Our rooftops could be collecting water for our use. We really have many technological options in front of us to become self-sufficient in our water usage and our water resources that are in our own homes. So I would challenge the Public Service Commission to do something public-minded, like charge United Water and the county to really develop some very aggressive conservation and ideas taking from cruise technology and water generation and water purification. I don't want to be part of a story that ends up as a movie like Erin Brockovich. And I just thank you all for all your love and concern for this beautiful place we live and for giving us time to speak. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We're going to hear from Bob Dillon. Our court reporter needs and deserves a short break. I just got a note, which I'll read in a second. So Bob, if you could lead off, and then we're going to take a 5 or 7 minute break and let people get up and stretch their legs, and then we'll continue. There's probably another 5 people signed in. All right? Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Supervisor Stewart. Thank you, panel. I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of sum up what has been said so far, and I am an intervener in this rate case, this surcharge case. I'm also an intervener in the need case, and I think it's important to summarize because I've already, in this case, been ruled out of order at least once, probably a couple of times. United Water submitted their direct testimony on April 7th, 2014. And at that time, I saw it was impossible for me to make direct testimony based on the parameters of this case. And they are, number one, that this case will deal with the amount of expenditures incurred by United Water to develop a long-term water supply solution, including expenditures incurred in seeking local and state regulatory approvals relating to the long-term water supply solution. That's number one. Number two, whether or not such expenditures are appropriately recovered through the surcharge sought by United Water, and if so, the amount and schedule for surcharge recovery. So I don't want to throw a damp rag on the proceedings tonight, but you're all out of order, okay? Except for Dan's comments, I didn't hear a lot that had to do with the parameters of this case. And I think the thing that's important to note is that this all goes to a subject which the town of Ramapo, through Dan and myself, have argued that the issue of prudence of this whole proceeding relating to the desal plant needs to be addressed. And that was promised to us by the Public Service Commission in the 2010 rate case. They said, among other things, we would have an opportunity to look at the issue of prudence. And so far, nowhere that I'm aware of is prudence being addressed. So I think that's important that in your comments, in your written comments, which you can still submit, and I encourage you to all submit written comments, that you bring up the fact that this entire situation has not been properly reviewed. I have in my papers also argued that United Water came before the Public Service Commission and the DEC with unclean hands. I have been involved in this since 2007. I have a background in accounting. I have done extensive research on the flows to New Jersey, and I know for a fact that United Water came to the table in 2006 and argued for this project when they knew that over the preceding years from 2002 to 2007, they knew that they were sending more water to New Jersey than they were permitted to. About 5 million gallons a day additional when Lake DeForest wasn't spilling. This is water they controlled. At the same time, they were promoting this project. They also, by the way, United Water New York has been owned by United Water New Jersey through their predecessors since 1890. So since 1890 going forward, United Water's had a firm grip on what's going on with Rockland's water resources. They knew prior to the U.S. Geological Survey study that Rockland's groundwater resources were more abundant than they were representing. And that is, when you go in, I'm not an attorney, but I've unfortunately had too many experiences in the civil courts. But when you go before a court and you ask for relief and you have basically lied about your premise, you're coming before the court with unclean hands. And I believe that the Public Service Commission should reject all of United Water's requests out of hand. The Public Service Commission process is different than the civil courts. If this was a civil court, perhaps Dan would be filing a motion for a summary dismissal of their claim, and the whole matter then would be disposed of. So I don't want to go any further. I've commented on this extensively. If you go to the Public Service Commission rate case in this matter, my comments have already been posted. They're still up on the website, even though I've been ruled out of order. But I think it's important that we demand that the Public Service Commission go back and include the issue of prudence in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. We're going to take a 5 or 6 minute break to allow folks to stretch their legs, allow our court reporter to recharge her batteries a little bit. And we have Rita Louie. Rita, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for having this, first of all, in Orangetown. This is awesome. We should be doing this in every town. I really thank Supervisor Stewart and Suzanne for taking the lead on this. Thank you. The surcharge for the Public Service Commission, first of all, there's some very basic facts. And one is that they weren't even allowed to apply for it until after construction began. You heard that said here tonight. You heard a lot of other things said here tonight, and I wrote a statement, but I'm not even reading from it. Because a lot of what I'm hearing, I'm becoming more and more convinced that the entire project from 2007 on, the pilot plant, the engineering studies, everything that's being billed for, all of the alleged community outreach, it's all been corporate theater. They knew what they wanted to do, they already had it in place, and they staged this coup on our water supply with the cooperation of several politicians and through media, and thought that we were going to fall for it. Thank goodness the people of Rockland County aren't that easily led. I have a question, and this is the audience participation part of this evening. How many people, if you received a bill in the mail and it said nothing on it except the cost. Let's say you received a bill in the mail tomorrow. You open up your mail, and you get a bill from United Water, and it says, United Water, $600, and on the column that says for what, it says water. That's it. How many in this room would go in their house immediately and pick up the phone and call United Water for an explanation? Raise your hand. Okay? Everybody would. All right? This is what they're trying to charge us for. They are presenting bills that say nothing. Engineering charge, you know, I'm making it up, $39,000 million. Architectural charges, $600,000, et cetera, et cetera. These are the things that are coming out in this hearing for this surcharge. I believe several things. One is not a single penny should be charged to the ratepayers for anything United Water paid that is not explained in detail what they paid for, because that was their own negligence for paying that bill. Number two, not a single penny should the ratepayers be charged for any single expenditure that is being billed for before the requirement by the Public Service Commission is fulfilled that a significant construction should have begun. It's pretty cut and dry. In any court of law, that would have been thrown out on day one. Anybody went in, if you went in to your boss and said, I want to get paid for this work that I did over the last month, even though my report isn't submitted yet, when you already had a contract with your boss that you were going to get paid at the end of the report being submitted, they'd fire you or laugh you out of the office. And that's what we should be doing to the Public Service Commission. We should be firing them or laughing them out of the county. United Water is using Rockland as an ATM machine for their shareholders. They've acted recklessly and imprudently in response to the original order, which they now think they should be reimbursed for. What United Water is doing is unconscionable. We demand that the PSC do their job on behalf of the ratepayers and not approve a single dime of this surcharge. Thank you.
I've got Ed Niff. Ed Niff. I may not be spelling that right. It's K-N-Y-F-D. Ed Niff. Okay. Jose Catavira. Is Jose still here? Nope. Cherie Ragland. After Cherie is Peggy Kurtz.
Thanks again for doing this. Everybody said everything that I would have said. We're all saying the same things. It's outrageous, it's immoral, it's unethical that they're asking for all this money. What I could share is that I have done a written comment and sent it, I sent a copy to Governor Andrew Cuomo, and I CC'd the PSC that I told them that I CC'd Governor Cuomo. And I got a pretty quick answer saying that Audrey Zibelman, chair of the New York Public Service Commission, asked me to respond to your recent correspondence in which you copied Governor Andrew Cuomo regarding United Water of New York's proposal to build a desalination plant on the Hudson River. So this was the Office of Consumer Services. So I would like to urge everybody, when they do their written comments, to let them know that you are CCing the governor, and I have a case number assigned and everything. So if we give them that much trouble, they might pay attention.
All right. As we said, there's instructions for how to submit written comments outside the front door. Thank you, Cherie. Peggy Kurtz, are you still here? Is Peggy here? Oh, there she is. Great. Thank you, Peggy, for all you've done.
Okay, I hope I can read my comments. I've been scribbling and taking things out as people have spoken, because most of what I was going to say has been said before. The $56.8 million that we're here to discuss tonight is only a down payment on United Water's desalination project, which has the costs have more than doubled in 7 years to $153 million. What we're being asked for is basically a financial bailout of United Water Suez's failed project. It's now clear this project is not needed, there are far less expensive options, and the costs of this monster project are out of control. Someone needs to pull the plug on this failed project, and fast. United Water needs to be told to stop spending money. If this project is allowed to move forward, we're essentially signing a blank check. The costs of stage 1 alone of this project have risen from $69 million in 2007 to the current projection of $153 million, or actually more than that. And I'm betting that not one person actually believes that it will come in at that cost. The stakes in resolving this issue are high. If United Water proceeds with a desalination plant, Rockland County water users will have their water bills doubled. A full review, which will be seen by the public as fair and reasonable, requires first and foremost the facts. But instead, at every turn, United Water has refused to provide the kind of transparent information that is needed for an informed review of the project. They have essentially stonewalled on a real budget for any stage of this project. I know it sounds hard to believe, but I also am an intervener on this case, and so I've seen it with my own eyes. The average citizen finds it absolutely incomprehensible that such a massive project with such grave financial implications could get this far without providing the public or the oversight agencies with a coherent budget, both for current costs or for past costs or for future costs. A budget squeezed out of United Water a few weeks ago is the closest approximation to a budget seen so far and is still incomprehensibly vague. For example, one budget item alone lists $39 million for engineering, surveying, and geotechnical. That's it, $39 million, no further detail. Another line item is $19 million for permitting, legal outreach, and education. Again, no detail. Surely this is completely unacceptable. I pulled out a bill from a contractor for $1,000, and there was all itemized, $100 for disposal of waste, etc. We all know, you get a bill from the plumber, it's itemized. Something feels profoundly broken and out of control. A supposedly regulated utility manages to push a project through for 7 years without a single transparent, detailed budget. Regulatory agencies seriously consider a major rate increase on top of 72% increases in revenues. This is in the rate case in 6 years. Oversight agencies contemplate a surcharge for a project that may never be built. At what point, we're all asking, do the oversight agencies step in to protect the public? And where does the governor stand in all of this? The most fundamental question underlying the case, however, is whether United Water, how did United Water make the decision to proceed with desalination? Was there a cost-benefit analysis in the beginning? If United Water failed to exercise proper due diligence, to properly consider all the available alternatives from a context of what would be most cost-effective and what would minimize cost burdens and would be least environmentally harmful, then Rockland ratepayers should not be asked to pay the bill. Rockland ratepayers should not be asked to pay the bill for corporate mismanagement and mistakes. As a for-profit corporation wholly owned by Suez, United Water would have made the profit on this desalination plant if it's approved, and they must be considered responsible for their own choices. The public should not be asked to bail United Water. If they would have made the profit, we should not be asked to bail out Suez for its own mistakes, especially in view of the many alarms raised by the public, the experts, environmental professionals, elected officials over the years. The PSC is charged with protecting the ratepayers for the kinds of abuses we've all been discussing this evening. Again, I want to ask the PSC to pull the plug on this project and to stop United Water from continuing to run up more charges. And finally, I want to echo what Alan Levin said earlier this evening about climate impacts, about the energy use from this project. Desalination is very energy intensive, and it's because of the climate impacts that I got involved, heavily involved in this case. It is absolutely, we know that it's absolutely urgent that we reduce our energy use steeply, and this project would lock us in to increase energy. It would just take us completely in the opposite direction, the wrong direction. So I just want to close with a quote from Klaus Jacob, as best I can remember it. He's a renowned climate scientist who happens to live in Rockland County. And he called, in his comments to the PSC, he called desalination an energy-guzzling greenhouse gas machine that should have no place in our society at this time. I just want to say we can do much better. Thank you.
Catherine, is Catherine Rowetter here? Thanks, Catherine. That's our last sign-in. If anybody wants to speak by raise of hands after that, just put your hand up.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to hear you all speak. You all know this issue so much better than I do. I came here tonight because I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with a similar water issue that has been horrific through my father's property in Pennsylvania, where hydraulic fracturing is happening. Many people that I know firsthand are suffering greatly because their water is tainted and they cannot drink their water. How will United Water prove to us that the water coming from the desal plant, if it goes through, is going to be safe to drink? I don't believe that there's any way, there is no way that they can prove that that water will be safe for us to drink. We already know we have health problems in our community, in communities like Long Island, where there are water issues that have been alluded to, if not even more stringent connections made to cancers and other diseases. What are we thinking? What is United Water thinking? What are our officials thinking when they think that this is in any way a good idea? It's just not viable for our health or our future. Already, our children have a shorter lifespan than we do, my generation. What are we doing to our future generations? I really urge all the officials to please think ahead. Think about what your legacy is here. And we need to make some changes. And the desalinization plant is not the kind of change we need. Thank you so much.
I see a hand in the back. Is that Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Baxter. I'm from Palisades, New York. I want to thank you all for having this meeting tonight. And I've sat here, as you all have, for the last how many hours, listened to passionate, knowledgeable, well-researched discussion items from all of us. And the one woman who said that PSC is not here, I just felt my blood boil. I just can't believe that they're not here. Maybe this is how they work. They don't show up at these meetings, but what is it going to take for them to, what more do they need to hear? I mean, there's so many people that are saying everything that's logical, mismanagement of funds by United Water, leaky infrastructure, creating waste of water, desalination plant across from Indian Point, strontium in the water that cannot be taken out, raise water prices that decrease. They raised money in their pockets that decreases money in our pockets because of this project. For years, people have been taking time. You all have been taking time by emailing your friends, by showing up at these meetings, and they are Goliath and we are David. But we know what happens with Goliath. Goliath keeps strong, and the Davids start to get tired, and they end up not showing up anymore. But we keep showing up. And we can't forget that United Water has people on their staff that can keep this fight going. They have a public relations department. They have people on staff that are paid to protect their interest. We're all volunteers, and we're citizens who, from our pockets, United Water is getting and enjoying wealth. We don't want this project, and I hope that PSC is really listening to this. I don't know what else we can do. We're going to take our lead from our elected officials, what more we can do to get this message to them that we do not want this. We are putting our trust in the PSC to make the decision that will protect us. And it's protecting them as well. It's protecting us. I don't know what else they need to hear from us. I like what one speaker said before us that said, put an end to this now. Just put an end to it. You said that. Put an end to it. Yesterday. Put an end to it now. Stop the bleeding. Let United Water close their public relations department and open up a department that's for conservation and put their money that they're using to try to convince the PSC and everybody else who wants to hear about this great idea and put it into conservation efforts that will help us all become a healthier people and a healthier planet. I'm sorry, but you've all been so respectful, but this is like enough already. I think put it to bed, right? Put it to bed.
Would anybody else like to make a comment? I see a hand up over here. Thank you. And Carol, don't forget, they're not here, but that's why we have a court reporter, and they do accept comments in a variety of forms.
Hi, I'm Jessica Clark. I live in Sloatsburg. And what I wanted to say is probably echoing everybody here. There is a Russian fable fairy tale about a hen trying to find a babysitter for her chicken. And, you know, she goes by the singing voice, and the fox happens to sing the sweetest. So she chooses the fox to babysit the chicken. You know what happens to the chicken, of course, you know? The chicken gets eaten. So I think we're the chicken right now. And we all know who the fox is. So this is the question to those of us that are inviting United Water to be part of the solution. I think that we have to fire the fox and find another babysitter. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to make a comment before we close for the night? Going once, going twice. Not seeing a hand. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our wonderful court reporter. The deadline for submitting written comments for the case we're doing is June 16th. So if you know anybody who couldn't come out tonight and you want to take one of those pieces of papers, go ahead and use it. What's that stand for, DPS? And the need case deadline is June 6th. So there's a couple of deadlines for written comments. It's still open if anybody wants to participate and send something in via the internet. That's it, folks.